Hi, grant writing peeps. How are things going? We are in the midst of working on our individual projects, and it's good stuff. Now, we've already talked a little bit about funding sources, and we know, generally speaking, that there are three streams for funding sources, right? We know this from this reading. We know it is public funds, which are tax dollars that come through the state. They come from the federal government usually, and very competitive, big bucks, long applications, like 150 pages plus often, lots and lots and lots of reporting that we have to do. So then there are the private foundations, which can be pretty large to very small, but generally smaller amounts than you're going to get with public funds. Public funds are often for multi-year grants. You get grant funding for a program for 3 or 5 years, or something like that. Generally, private foundation grants are a year at a time. And then there's corporate grants, grants from companies, which are the wild, wild west. There's no system in place the way there is with grants.gov or our foundations as well. But we're going to focus in this project on private foundation grants for a number of reasons. A lot of money out there. They are the most simple application process and the easiest reporting process as well. That doesn't mean they're easy necessarily, but private foundation grants are a good place to learn to get started writing grants. And remember, those add up. So the purpose of today's little discussion is to get on the Foundation Directory website, which I've got up here. Foundation Directory, basically the Foundation Center, which is a nonprofit that helps study other nonprofits, that collects data and information on them as well. And it's a subscription database, and that's important because you do have to pay to have this service. If you are going to be working in grant writing at all, you really, really, really need to have this service. I tell people, if you are searching for private foundation grants and you are not using the Foundation Directory online, you're like a football fan trying to find the game on the Super Bowl. But, I mean, you can look hard, work hard, but it's just not there. So we are on the Foundation Directory. I'm going to go ahead and log in. My password is Hail Flavius. It's not because, you know, I need a new password now that we've got a new president, or now that we will anyway. So I log in, and I can search grant makers, and I have a number of students working on different grants. I have one student who's wanting to fund a basketball camp for youth in a low-income area, and she wants about $5,000 to fund the program. So that's a good kind of very specific, targeted program for a grant. So let's look at this. So I get into fields of interest now, and there's an index. I could do sports, or I could do youth development. Let's start with sports. And so let me just see. There are sports. Let's see if sports is a category. Sports, sports training, sports and recreation, sports hobbies. So yeah, there are a lot of, it's a category there. So geographic focus, Texas, because that's where the grant's going to be given. So let's just search and see what we can find. So right away we find nearly 300 foundations that give money. These are arranged, notice, in descending order from the biggest foundations with the biggest amount of money given, all the way to the one on the last page is going to be tiny, I would imagine. So let's see what it says. So yeah, it goes down to, well, 0. That's pretty tiny. All right, so let's go ahead and limit this a little bit. So we can limit this a little bit. Applications accepted, obviously we want to get rid of them, because if they're not taking applications, then you don't want to apply to them. Why would there be foundations that don't accept applications? For example, there is a foundation in Corpus Christi, Texas, that just gives money to provide clothes and food and toys for kids who have been removed from their families and placed into foster care or emergency situations. That fund, that foundation was set up by a family that has the heart to care for foster children. And so they just basically have this foundation set up. So when there's a child in a situation, a social worker from Child Protective Services can go to this foundation and say, hey, we need some money for this young man or this young woman, and they get that there. So that's set up for as a foundation that gives money, a lot of money actually, but they don't take applications. So that's why you would have a foundation that doesn't take applications. But for our purposes, we're looking at foundations that accept applications. Total giving, let's go. I mean, obviously, we're not looking for foundations that give away $100 million because those are the big things, the Pfizers and things like that as well, that give big programs for social change. We're looking for more local community foundations, ones maybe to work on a smaller level. So maybe let's look at foundations that give under $150,000. Let's try that group. Let's see if we find any possibilities. So we find a number of foundations here. Some of these are in Texas, some of these are not. So let's just look at a couple of these as well. Live the Call Shema. So we're going to click at Live the Hall Shema. Established in Texas, giving in Texas. Sports and Recreation, Texas. Application form required. Initial approach, contact foundation. So this foundation would actually be probably a very good foundation as a possibility to fund this basketball camp. Usually this doesn't happen. I'll look at some others. I usually look at a couple of others, and then it takes a while to find it. But so in this case, this is a keeper. We want to hang on to. We want to remember. Live the Call Shema Foundation. So I have choices. I could print, I could email, I could save it to me. So let me just go ahead and email this to myself. Okay. Give myself my email address. And then I'll send that. Now, just so you know, if you wind up using this, or if I wind up using this for you, because these emails are generated by a machine, they're going to be read as spam by your personal email or probably your TAMUCC email as well. So you'll want to check in your junk mail for something from the Foundation directory. So even if Live the Call Shema is a great choice, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I mean, we're only going to write one application at a time, but you want to generate about 5 possible sources just to see which would be good matches for it. So let's look at the Hedrick Foundation. And folks, there are no shortcuts in this. Once you get funding sources narrowed down, you just have to go through them one at a time. There's no, this is as quick as it gets, basically. So, sports and education giving in Texas, application form required, initial approach letter. So wow, we are really living the dream here. We are really kind of hitting home run balls for possible foundation sources for this grant for this young woman who wants to do the basketball camp. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I would go through and generate a list of at least 5 possible grants, maybe more. And then once I've got that list of possibilities, then I'm going to look at this. And bear in mind, as I go through, I want to make, as I look through these things, I'm looking for, are there limitations? It says giving in Illinois and Texas. Focus Texas. So all of these are pluses or yeses. Let's find one that's a no. Okay, the Stasny Foundation, the Eskagay Stasny Foundation. Okay. Giving in Shackelford County, Texas. Okay, that's a no automatically. Why? Because we're not in Shackelford County. So we want to look for things that we can give to. Now I'm going to go back to one of these others that we both identified already as possibilities. And okay, so we've got this list. We got Shackelford, we got the Shima Foundation, we got a couple others. And then we have to do what I've already talked about, but what's very important, and that is contacting them. Contacting them. And I know I've mentioned this before, I've mentioned this in writing, but this is the most common bit of advice I get from successful grant writers. They tell me, look, before you write the grant, contact the foundation, contact the agency if it's a public grant, and if at all possible, get word. Hey, is this the kind of foundation that might be viable for this grant? So basically what I would do is I would call them up. I'm going to pantomime, obviously. So I would get on my phone here, and I would call 704-366-7880, and I do that number, and then I would call. But before I call, I'm going to practice that phone call. And I may have said this before, but I actually write out what I'm going to say beforehand. I do it in pen and paper. I could do it on the screen. But I want to be prepared to give them the information that they need. So I would say, hi, I'm Chuck Etheridge. I'm a volunteer grant writer working with, well, I won't give the name of the agency, but because it's a student's project, but I'm working with X agency or X group, the name of the agency, and we are looking for a $5,000 grant. It's important to specify the amount. We're looking for a $5,000 grant for the purposes of funding a basketball camp. So my group wants this amount of money for this purpose, the basketball camp, and then what impact for low-income children. Is this the kind of project that would be appropriate for the Gardner and Joan Heydrich Foundation, or Heydrich Foundation? I want to make sure I pronounce that right, as well. So once I've got that straight in my head, I would make the phone call and say, hi, this is Chuck Etheridge. I'm a volunteer grant writer calling on behalf of X School Association, and we are looking for a $5,000 grant to fund a basketball camp for low-income youth in the summers. Is this the kind of foundation that the Gardner and Joan Heydrich Foundation would consider funding? And again, they're going to give me three answers. Sorry, not you. They're going to give me three answers. One of three answers. Yes, it's appropriate. Send us an application. That's not really the kind of stuff that we fund. Or, we're not funding that right now, but there's this other foundation that you really ought to contact. And I mention that because the nonprofit world is kind of small. People who work in particular areas, youth, social services, health, they tend to talk to one another. So maybe if they're not giving to youth that year, they might know some other agencies for you to contact. So there's no downside for doing that. It's not always possible, but if you can, find out beforehand if you're a viable candidate for that grant. So thank you, Mr. Heydrich. Sorry. And there we go. That's what you do. So to sum up, to recap, we're just talking about private foundations. The best tool for private foundations to find out possible funding sources is the foundation directory online. It is a resource that you have to pay to use, and so for the purpose of this class, contact me, call, come by the office, and I'll help you use this tool. Let you use my service, my subscription to fund your grants. But then if you get out working in the nonprofit world, it's really, really, really a necessary expense for your agency to be successful. So, and then, so you get access to the foundation directory. You look at, you search some grant makers, and you look at the field of interest and the focus, and then you identify a list of possibilities, and then you begin contacting them, and hopefully you find a list of agencies that are, the list of foundations that are a good match for your agency, and then you apply to them one at a time. So that's how it works. I won't say it's easy peasy, but it's straightforward work. So thanks for your time.